know what you're talking about unless you had a full explanation of it.
Yeah. All right. So thanks to Mike, I'm actually recording this. We've just got one person here. Greg showed up. So Greg and I actually did an inspection together the other day. So we've been going over an inspection report that we did together, which is kind of fun. So anyway, and this is the boiler system we were going over here. But we've got the installer's information and their phone number, and when they put it in, and we're including thermal images. This was a radiant floor system. So you can see, and I think I made a note, yeah, that upstairs they had the thermal image, or the radiant floors under carpeting, and you can see it was starting to heat up, but I always find it takes a long time to get a good image when you got the in-floor heat over carpet, and so I made a note about that's why some of the thermal images were less clear. So that's what we were going over there. And then this was the boiler system. It was one of those tankless boilers. And I made a few notes about it, that it was working. We tested it, that we didn't find any leaks, that it was a low pressure system and running at 20 PSI. Whenever I do a boiler, I try to include, a picture of the tridicator, so we get pressure and temperature and stuff. And, if there's service records or phone numbers, I'll take a picture, put that in here. And then whenever I'm doing in-floor systems, pretty smart to at least I really try to find every manifold in the building. And if you see a manifold, open it up and check for leaks. Some of the old ones, I'll find leaks at the manifold. So that's kind of what these pictures are. And Greg had a good comment. We had talked on site about the distinguishing open loop from closed loop, and I don't think I made a note about that here. If it's closed loop, to me that's like the traditional old boiler system, but open loop is certainly something you want to look for and make comments about if you see it. So in these the client was actually, for this one, was in China. I don't even think they read English, so probably nobody will even read this report. But should somebody want to read it, I was trying to label a lot of the parts to the boiler because these things can be pretty overwhelming for people. So, showing the taco controls for it, and I was circling the flush kit, which is where they would flush the water heater. And I listed this as a monitoring item and was recommending keeping it on a regular scheduled maintenance. So, annual maintenance on the boiler. All right, so we're just kind of going down a finished report here, just kind of talking about why we reported on things and so forth. These are cool, some thermal images. This also had a 2-head ductless heat pump system. So outside I took a picture of the compressor data plate, and then inside we got thermal images of the system working in heating mode. So just kind of documenting what we found there. I like to use my Sniffit carbon monoxide detector, and I will use this to test most gas appliances. This was a gas fireplace, and so I used the note feature that I tested the gas log today and didn't notice any high CO readings. Let's see, gas meter. This would be for guys that are in seismic zones, but California, I think you're required to have, one of those Northridge valves. We're not required to have them up in Seattle. We're going to wait till after the big earthquake to make that a mandatory thing. So in the meantime, I listed as an improvement item, but you can see you could just start typing in like Northridge, Greg, and it'll come right up.
Yeah.
And I've got
I found that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a link to more info. So I was listed that as an improvement item. So now we're in structure and basement. This was for you guys that missed the beginning here. This is was a brand new house on an old site. So I think it was originally like a 1940s house or something. They basically tore it down. But this was crazy because of lot line adjustment. The house had a curve to it. So the east wall literally wasn't square. I mean, it was pretty funny when you were inside. The rooms were all sort of at an angle on this wall. And that's a pretty cool thing to talk about. I mean, I kind of assumed that what happened is where the original building was sitting on the lot, they were allowed to use their old lot lines that are sort of grandfathered in, but where they extended the house, they had to conform to the modern setback requirements. And I asked the builder, he showed up when we were there, and that's exactly what he said was the deal. So, it's not really a repair item, but I certainly listed it as a due diligence item of like, I would ask the builder more information about this. It doesn't seem to be a defect, but it certainly was weird. It's pretty odd to see new construction and to have the wall so out of square. I don't know if you can see it from these pictures, but you can see it curving in there. It's kind of strange, huh, Greg?
Yeah, it was really odd to have that on the interior.
So I don't know. I didn't make a huge fuss about it because it just seemed like that's what it was, and the building department let them do it. So just sort of what you're buying. I also made a note because it was a new build on an old building. I made a note to ask the builder and check about the extent of foundation replacement. I really could hardly see any of the foundation. This is good data for you, Greg, and Seattle people, but I don't believe they started permitting foundations in Seattle until 1965.
Mm-hmm.
Which is mildly horrifying. But if I were building a new building, I wouldn't use my old foundation. I don't think they have a ton of rebar and stuff in the old ones. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, this is just a note. Basement moisture. I like to just make a note that, I checked the basement today. If I can't find anything, to me, wet basements are one of those sort of ubiquitous things, and it's probably pretty smart to make some kind of a comment to say you looked around and tried to find water in the basement and couldn't. Here the carpet was really tight. On a lot of buildings, I'll use my needle nose pliers and pull a corner of the carpet, and that's money in the bank. That if they have gotten wet, the tack strip is usually rusty. So that's a pretty good inspection tip when you're in a basement. And another one to watch out for is if it's like a flip or something. I would definitely say something about it because the flippers never waterproof the basements. They just throw a bunch of carpet down there. So that's one you want to be ahead of on a flip always. So we're just kind of scrolling down here. This is kind of a cool observation. But when you're doing a new build, make sure you check where the carpet meets either tile or wood or whatever the thresholds. But there was a lot of tack strip poking out, and boy, you step on one of those and you'll know about it. So good thing to check for. Some stains on the carpet. I think the builder was going to replace those. This is under walls, ceilings, trims, and closet. When you're typing in, I just type in blue tape whenever I'm doing new construction. And so during inspection, I noted some areas of the interior paint job required touch-up. This is normal in new construction. Paint touch-up is beyond the scope of this inspection, but I recommend working with the builder so you have an opportunity to lay out some blue tape so you can get the interior paint tuned up to your satisfaction. And then I would include pictures of some examples, and so you could even finish this and say examples of, spots I noted during inspection include, and then you could put some of these in. But I think that's a nice way to do it. You're trying to help people a little bit and say like, hey, you need to finish the paint touch up without kind of trying to interject yourself into the micromanagement of that, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense, Greg?
Yeah, definitely.
And this one, they just got paint on the receptacle. They needed to clean that off. So here's a video I put in. The guardrail or the graspable handrail going up to the second floor kind of was chafing against the wall. Just the graspable handrail is making kind of a noise here. So I love the little short video clips, especially with noises. It's a great way to capture noise. I have another one coming up. It'll be interesting to see how that turned out. So I like to make a note about this. Most of us probably deal with the little vents in the windows, but I've got a note built right into the library. You could probably, in the Windows section, just start typing in vents and it'll pop up. But I like to explain that, they've got this little laundry timer, and you can make sure your relative humidity doesn't get, above 55%. So just kind of noting some features of the house. New construction, always smart to note, that the screens aren't installed. And if I see them in a big pile like this, I'll snap a picture of them. Kitchen. Looks like we have another video here. Oh, this was us. We figured we'd Chinese clients, so Greg videoed me. I thought those were pretty cool. I don't know. That's sort of a nice thing with the video. If you got clients that can't be there, you can take some just general shots and try to demonstrate some aspects of the house and put them in. This was a weird one. The dishwasher wasn't draining. Something was caught in that drain. So pretty simple repair item there. Let's see. We've got no ice in the ice maker. So that's ice makers are one that it's funny, they say about home inspections, you can always tell where a home inspector had a client complain about something, because that's like all these things show up in their report. But I remember I did one years ago, and the guy was upset because his ice maker wasn't on, and I don't know, it bums you. You never want your client upset. I mean, he wasn't that upset about it, but it's just one of those things that always stuck with me. So now when I'm looking at a fridge, to me, I take a picture of the ice maker. If it's working, I might not put it in the report, but if here you had the tray and it wasn't full of ice, so I recommended getting the ice maker up and running. Burning off the oven, that's another one on new construction that I really like to include, because the ovens smell horrible if you don't run them for a while. There's my just general bathroom note that I put in. Bathrooms are pretty clean here. I just showed the shower running in the master. This is what I wanted to play. So we were getting this big, I think the pipes were expanding by the basement shower. So let's see if you can hear it here. Hear that?
Yeah, I remember it was real loud. Did the builder have any feedback on that?
Yeah, the builder said he was going to fix it. So just so you guys know who missed this, this was a report where I think I had 20 repair items, and the builder said he would fix everything except the client was really bad out of shape, that the fence wasn't stained, and so I put that in, and the builder wouldn't do that. But anyway, this was a weird one. I think they didn't secure the pipes behind the wall, and I mean, it wasn't a weird one, but it's gonna be hard to fix. I don't know how you go back and stop that at this point.
Yeah, I would be curious to know.
There it is. And I just caught one of them. I mean, when Greg and I were there, it was doing it constantly. So, and there was another little leak at the shower head, so I put a video in. Anyway, so the guys in the beginning, we started recording this a little late, but anyway, I want to go on to a couple other things. But Greg, was that helpful? I mean, just kind of going over that report.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So we were just looking at a finished report we did. I want to go over a couple things. Are you into hanging out a little bit longer, Greg?
Yeah, I've got time.
Cool. We'll close that out. Let's open up ScribeWare. We're going to go to the sample report. And we got our media here. Let's see. So, yeah, this was a 14-year-old house, so it had some rot repair that was needed around the outside. And I like showing this because it's just such a great way to do it. But there was just a bunch of little places that needed rot repair. So I'll start typing in localized, and you could probably type in rot with it. So there it is. Localized rot repairs are needed to the exterior. In this case, it was mostly the trim. So I might go up here and just say trim. and then we'll check them. So we'll go and highlight the ones that we want to put in here. I got a couple more by the garage door. Boom, right there. And I think I found another one at the very end of the inspection. Then I want to go over, there's some really cool moss pictures I want to show you in a minute. Here's the last one. So you can see I just highlighted all these pictures. I went through my whole film roll, highlighted all of them. I'm going to drag them in. Now, Steve's working on the mobile app, and my hope when we have the mobile app done is that we can, when we're taking these pictures, we can tag them with a voice tag to kind of pre-fill the caption in, which would really be awesome. It would speed things up a lot. But anyway, so this is part of a pest inspection. So we could go to the client and property information. We'll turn on the little toggle to make it a pest inspection. Go back to the exterior here. Now we should see our little bug icon to make it part of a pest inspection. And then we can label these, right? So we'll do wood decay at entry side of house. Helps if you spell decay right. There was a mushroom growing out of the siding here too. Okay, this was probably the worst rot. But spruce trim just rots like nobody's business, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Southwest corner.
Wow, that's 14 years old, huh?
Yep. Oh yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I mean, even newer, you'll find this spruce trim just has no resistance to decay.
Yeah.
All right. So we're really getting specific about the locations here. And then there's some wood decay by the garage door. So Steve, if you're watching, this is the stuff that it would save so much time if we could just voice tag the captions in, because then once I drag the pictures in, I'm going to go here, I'm going to put my cursor, and I'm going to use this little bullet feature, so it's just making a bulleted list out of all my photo captions. You've seen this before, right, Greg?
Yes.
So anyway, I think when we can have tagged photos, that's just going to make these types of observations extremely fast. Really excited about that. All right, so some of the things I wanted to show you. So check this out. This was kind of interesting, Greg. What do you think of these pictures? See these ones over here with the roof pictures? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go into the roofing section. We could make a note. I don't know if some guys aren't from around here, but in Washington, if you don't keep walking, you'll get moss growing on you. Moss grows like crazy around here. This was a 15-year-old roof. What do you think's going on here, Greg?
Probably some inadequate ventilation up in the attic, or stuff coming through the sheeting, or what was going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty
North
interesting,
side,
isn't it? The way there's patterns, So
yeah.
to me, it looks like the framing,
Okay.
And so there's probably some amount of like heat loss going on with the framing and that's causing the building to dry in some places and stay wet in others. So you get the moss growth locally. So this
was it a vaulted ceiling, or?
Well, I was able to get to it, so I could go up there and I'll show you some pictures of that. When I went up into the attic, well, here, even better, the next step when I was inside is I chased it with the infrared camera, and you can see the thermal barriers are pretty damaged. And these really looked like
Mm-hmm.
rodent damage to me. The way here it looked like these are skylight chambers where the insulation's coming off, and then a lot of these little round holes are usually where rodents have been burrowing. And so you could see
Okay.
how the insulation was kind of mottled looking, not solid. So I think we're getting a lot of air leaking around rodent holes. So that's what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was all my suspicion when I got up there. And then you get up there and you can see, people were working in the attic. So there's like a bare speaker here. The insulation was really
Yeah.
loose around the skylight. You get like holes in the insulation. You can see here's a cool picture of it trails through the insulation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can see, look at that trail right here, so you can tell rodents were up there at some point. So kind of interesting. I mean, that was just a neat one where it was one of those observations where I kind of noticed a weird thing on the roof, and then you chase it and you see it at the thermal camera, and then you get up in the attic and you see it up there. So I think that some of this was probably some amount of like thermal bridging with the framing, but I think they're also getting a bunch of heat loss around those skylights that was creating some of that pattern there. And then you really see the heat loss with the infrared pictures.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah. Good investigations there.
Yeah, I mean that's when inspection is fun, is when you're sort of tying the clues together. You know,
Yep.
and so
Yeah.
here's just a cool example of it, of like, well, I used two different cameras and I inspected it from three different angles, essentially from the roof with infrared inside and then up in the attic, and you kind of connect the dots. So, and I actually put all this not in the roofing section, but in the insulation section because, I made two notes. One was that the roof needed a moss treatment, and then the other was that uh, the thermal barriers needed repair. We could go look at this report real quick. Let's see how I reported on it. Where were we? Um, So let's see. Here's the second one, is the observations. The attic insulation is rodent damaged and incomplete. I did not find droppings or live rodents, but there are numerous tunnels. Maybe the rodents are in older condition. Re-insulate to modern standard or to best possible levels. Be sure to seal up all air leakage points during repairs, and prior to insulating to modern standard, be sure all rodent issues have been resolved and all projects like wiring and bath fans have been completed. Please note that signs of heat loss from the house are visible on the roof. See the moss growth patterns. So we could click here on the hot link, and that'll bring us right to this observation. And you can see the signs of heat loss. So here's how I reported on all that stuff. Thermal anomalies suggest incomplete and damaged thermal barriers. That's some pretty good language there. You right there, Greg?
Sorry about that.
All right. So anyway, does that make sense, man?
Yeah, definitely.
There's that speaker that had like no insulation around it. So anyway, that was kind of a cool thing. On looking at this house, it had a nice bright color to the wood. I always, mold in the attic is such a common thing that if it has a nice bright color, I always note that. So we could go back to what we were doing. Let's see. The spa wasn't really working, so I took. Let's do that real quick. Go into plumbing. We'll go into additional plumbing, and I'll start typing in spa work. That was hot. Maybe spa inoperative. So here it is. Spa's not operating. Old removal recommended. I don't know if it needed to be removed necessarily, but why don't we use this one? So, spa is not in operating condition, time of inspection, no power or water. So let's grab these pictures. We'll put them in. Inspection of spas is beyond the scope of this inspection. If you're concerned about this unit, I recommend hiring a specialist to further evaluate the tub. Repair or remove as recommended. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And then here you might, like where the breakers shut off, I might just say like, the disconnect was off at the time. Always remember that the disconnect needs to be within sight of the spa. It's a good code thing to remember. Anyway, I don't inspect spas, but or that's funny. I mean, I end up kind of inspecting them. There's a lot of things like that I say in the report I don't inspect them, but I try to make notes about them for people. And I think that's really important, especially if you're a new home inspector. Our clients do not know the standards of practice.
Right.
And if the house has a hot tub and they're really excited about the hot tub and you don't say anything about it, you may be following the standards of practice, but they could be disappointed.
For sure. Yeah.
So,
or if you do inspect it, let them know that it's not in the SOP and that you've gone to the extra mile for them, kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's sort of how I put it here. It's like, well, these aren't part of a home inspection, but I looked at it for you and it's off, and so you probably want to have it serviced or fixed or whatever. So I don't think you have to kind of put a ton of mileage into the thing, but and if it's working, my observation is like, well, the spa was hot and working today. I don't inspect spas, but find out more information from the seller. How old is it? Who put it in? Who services it?
Yeah.
So, this was one, actually, Greg and I ran into this when he was helping me on one the other day, but I took the water pressure in the backyard and it was about 100 PSI. And then I took it again. After testing the water inside, it just didn't feel like the place had high water pressure. So when I was done, I went around and I tested it again at a different hose bib, and I got 80 PSI. And I think a plumber was telling me that if you're not careful, when you open up you put your pressure gauge on, you open up the valve, and the way some of them work, the stem, water can build up pressure in the stem, and just the stem of the handle essentially can like increase the pressure in the valve, if that makes sense. So anyway, I don't, just because you get a high reading once, to me, I would chase that down a little bit and then test it in a couple more places and see.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Here's a couple cool pictures. These are worth talking about. This is for pest inspection stuff. Yeah, so I started typing in carpenter ant and wooded for wooded area. So this house is set in a wooded area. And I would get some pictures of rotted wood around the building. You could call it a monitor item. You could also call it a repair if you're going to recommend removal of conducive debris. But this is some good language. I would say anytime you're doing a house in the woods, you need to say something about carpenter ants. You could even say, like, if it's cold out, you can be like, it's, there's a good chance they're dormant right now, but the reality is a house in the woods is, for at least around here, you're pretty guaranteed to get carpenter ants at some point just roaming around. I mean, your house is built in their habitat,
Sure.
So worth saying something about there.
Okay.
There's some other interesting things on this one. I really like this house. It was actually kind of a simple house. Yeah, this is always a good one to watch for, Greg. Pet door in the garage, set door between the garage and the house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they breached so literally you just start typing in pet door. It should come right up. The door between the garage and the house is no longer a fire-rated door. So pretty simple on that one. Here's a picture of the main water shutoff. I'm documenting that it's an old tank that's kind of original. This is another good one we could talk about. This is the circ pump The circ pump wasn't installed, so we can go into distribution pipe, start typing in circulation pump, not plugged in, you can see. So I noted that the hot water heater, I should get rid of hot. So easy to do. I'm going to get rid of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to update my library. I noted that the water heater has a circulation pump. This was not plugged in at the time of inspection. Inquire with the seller if the hot water pipes have been set up for the system and why it was not in use. Have this demonstrated as operable or repair as needed. See, I'm always making subtle adjustments to the library. So we'll update the library, and then we'll drag that picture in. That makes sense, Greg? Circ pumps?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a pretty good thing to kind of say something about. You really want to say something about the circ pump, in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another one. Branch feeder. You know about these?
Where are you looking at? Picture?
So we'll use this picture. I'm going to do branch. Let's see. So the arc fault breakers in this panel are an older branch feeder model AFCI. These are first generation technology. They will not perform as reliably as new versions of AFCIs known as combination AFCIs. Updating is recommended. You know, I would probably call this an improvement item. That's a little subjective.
Okay, I wasn't familiar with this. Huh?
Yeah, it's a good thing to know about. These are the first generation AFCIs. So I'm going to use, we'll use the, I use one called paint.net as just kind of an aftermarket photo editing software. I know Mike
Mm-hmm.
Paris uses a good one too that he likes. And I got that one.
Yeah.
For some reason, I don't use that. But
Photoscape, I think.
yeah, that might be it.
Yeah.
So we can use shapes, and then you can go under rectangle. We should be able to get a shape here to kind of just show which breakers we're talking about here. We could change the color so that it's a bit more visible. We could make them a little thicker. And we could maybe even make it like a dotted line or something.
Oh, yeah.
You just hit save. Okay. So it saved it. Now we close out of it, and now you can see it's all right in ScribeWare. So anyway, we added that to it. That makes sense?
What program? Yeah, what program was that?
That was paint.net. And I actually
Okay.
bought it through, like Microsoft. I believe there's a program called Paint that comes with Windows, and it's not that one. It's paint.net. And I had to pay for it, but it was like, I don't know, $6 or something. It wasn't that big a deal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's see. Here's a little one like the exterior door sweep. Let's see. So we'll go to the exterior. We're going to go to exterior doors. But I always make a note if these sweeps are damaged. So we'll just start typing in sweep. Missing a proper sweep. The sweep is damaged. We'll drag that one in. You can see I had a couple different ones. So why don't we label them just so you get comfortable labeling them. We'll click on this guy. We're going to edit in library. And I'll do sweep damaged. And we'll update that existing library entry. We could look at some other sweep observations. We could just do this one. We'll edit this in the library. Missing. Is that helpful, Greg? Just to kind of show you how to.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and we'll get rid of that. We're just fixing the library, a little tune up. Yeah, so the sweep was damaged here. It's kind of an easy thing to, you can put a little circle around it. There we go. All right. The place had a brand new heat pump system. If there's any other, there's one other interesting thing I wanted to show you, and then we'll, a couple things. This is good. Crawl space. You can see two different colors of insulation. That probably tells you they had to do rodent work at some point, re-insulate. And I found a few droppings down there, but it was really clean. It looked pretty good, but I was definitely going to recommend that they set and monitor some traps to kind of keep an eye on that. This bolting here, it's not a bad idea in the structure. I think I have it here. Evidence of seismic protection was noted. In this case, I have retrofitting protection, which it wasn't retrofitted, so I'll get rid of that word. You could add like so I'm just making it kind of specific, but that's a nice thing to add. People often have that question, was the house bolted to the foundation? That's easy thing to add. And then I wanted to just go over this real quick. This would be a fun one for Charlie. I'm teaching that, or Charlie and I are doing that electrical class here on Saturday, but under grounding and bonding, we could put this. So this is interesting. The house had CSST. It's propane run from a propane tank to the house. And they did bond the CSST. But the CSST has to be bonded with, I believe it's number 6. And that ain't number 6.
No.
So, yeah, I mean, it looks like 10, I believe. It looks like it says right on it, but it definitely wasn't number 6. So, I don't know. I didn't see bonding out at the propane tank for the CSST, so I definitely made a note about that. It's always hard to know, it's hard to come out and say, this definitely isn't done right. I mean, I think I said something like, well, it looks undersized at the fireplace, and I didn't find another bonding connection anywhere else, so I'd have this further evaluated. I think I called it a due diligence item. That's kind of an interesting one. You don't usually see that bond connection at the gas pipe under the fireplace.
All right. Yeah.
So, cool, man. Well, we could all get on with our day, but I hope that was helpful. Fun little jaunt through some stuff.
Yeah. I like those roof shots with all that growing stuff. That was interesting.
Yeah, pretty interesting, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Greg, I appreciate you joining. We didn't get too many people showing up today because I apologize for doing it so last minute. I had a bunch of cancellations, and so I was like, we'll just do one and see who shows up. So anyway, always helpful. Awesome, Greg. Yeah, and we've recorded this, so hopefully, if you guys can get something out of it. And thanks for showing up, Greg. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Have fun on Saturday. I'm sorry I can't make it.
Understand, man. You made that class last year, though, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I think it was May or something we did.
That's an awesome class. I'm psyched to.
It was. Yeah, it was really informative.
Nice. All right, Greg, good to see you, man. And thanks for watching if anyone else has watched. And take care.
Right on, Dylan. Take it easy.
Yep. See ya. Bye.
Bye.